Hi, so far in this course we talked about extreme values, namely three definitions of extreme values, definition 1, 2, and 3. Now you may recall at the very beginning of this course I mentioned the course title has two phrases, extreme values and financial risk. Now today I'm going to make a beginning on the second phrase of the course title, which is about financial risk. And as part of that topic, as part of that phrase, I'm going to start talking about portfolio theory. Okay. Now, a portfolio, you may know, is a collection of investments. So, for example, you may choose to invest in gold, silver, and copper. So this is here you have collection of three investments. Or you may, another example, you may invest on renting properties, for example, one bedroom apartments, or two-bedroom apartments, three-bedroom apartments, and so on. So once again, here you have a collection of investments by renting these apartments, right? Now, and of course there are many other examples. Now let me introduce some notation. Let N denote the number of investments. So in these two examples, N is equal to 3. And let X1 denote the loss on investment 1. Okay, X2 denote the loss on investment 2. And let X3 denote the loss on investment 3. And so on until let Xn denote the loss on investment N. Okay, so we need all these variables x1 to xn representing the losses on the N investments, right? To talk about portfolio theory, right? Right. The next thing I'm going to talk about is there are 6 possible cases that we can consider in portfolio cases, in portfolio theory. So I'm going to write them down what those cases are. Number one, you may suppose that the losses on the N investments are IID, and N is fixed. So IID, of course, means independent and identically distributed. That's case 1. Case 2, you may suppose that the losses are IID and N itself is a random variable. Case number 3 is where x1 to xn I n id, which means the following, which means that independent but not identically distributed. And N, the number of investments, is fixed. So this is case number 3. Case number 4, where the losses are INID and N is a random variable. Okay, and case number 5, excuse me, are dependent random variables, and N is fixed. And finally, the case number 6 is dependent random variables, and N is a random variable. So these are the 6 possible cases that could arise in practice. Of course, some of these cases may not be realistic. For example, case number 1 may not be realistic. And some of these cases are realistic. For example, case number 5 is possibly the most realistic of the 6 cases, because you would expect investments on different things to depend on each other, right? And not to be independent. Anyway, we will consider all 6 cases in this and the subsequent videos. Right. Now, the question, before we go to the cases, the 6 different cases, we need to ask ourselves, what do we want out of the portfolios? So, in other words, what variables are we interested in, right? So, variables of interest. All right. A, the first variable that is of obvious interest is the sum of the losses. So you take the sum of the n losses, and this is known as the total portfolio loss, right? And B, another variable that is of interest is I'm going to denote it by U, is the minimum portfolio loss. In other words, it's the smallest of the losses. So and another variable that is of interest is the maximum of the losses. In other words, the largest of the losses. Right, so these are just three of the variables that are of interest, but of course there can be many other variables that are of interest. But for this course, we will limit our interest only on these three variables. Right, and in the next video, I will talk about case 1 of portfolio theory.